You're listening to In My Humble Opinion with Charles Lewis and Maxilia Robinson. Only on 101 Jams.
Okay, and we're back. Maxilia Robinson here and Charles Lewis with In My Humble Opinion. And we have a great guest who I'm very gracious for you allowing us, setting some time aside to speak with us. I reached out to an individual who is working with Virginia Tech team on the Flint Water Crisis. This gentleman was gracious enough to respond and said, sure, I'd love to talk to you. So, Anurag, Mantha, I want to thank you again. How are you?
Thank you, Maxilia. I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. And so, I just want to talk about what you and your people are working on right now. Of course, it was a Virginia Tech professor who kind of disclosed the problem with the Flint water. And from what I understand, you are part of his team now, and you guys are working on kind of the projects to follow this crisis. Go ahead. I'll allow you to introduce yourself and just explain what it is that you're working on right now.
Okay. So my name is Anurag Mantha. I'm a PhD student with Dr. Mark Edwards at Virginia Tech. And I've been involved on the Flint Water Study team since its inception in August of 2015.
Okay.
So I've worked in all aspects of our work in Flint, but right now we are in Flint sampling water heaters. And so the idea is that because corrosive water went through the system, it probably affected the water heaters as well. So we are investigating both the chemical side and the biological side. So we are investigating for metals in water and also Legionella. Legionella pneumophila is the bacteria that causes Legionnaire's disease, and it's a type of pneumonia. And during the summer months, the incidence rates are usually higher.
Okay. So
this is the best time to investigate Legionella pneumophila, and there was a Legionnaire's disease outbreak in the county last summer.
Okay.
So that is why we are investigating for water heaters. So we are doing a pilot study where we have taken a pool of 30 homes in Flint, which are close to the two big hospitals, Hurley Medical Center and McLaren Hospital. And we are sampling from the tap, from the shower head, from the water heater itself, and then cleaning it. So doing a rigorous flushing protocol. And then a week after we flush the water heaters, another team is going to come in and sample the same homes so that we can do a before and after comparison study.
Okay.
And go across, so we are looking at both electric and gas water heaters. So it'll be a study across comparing electric and gas water heaters, and then the same home before and after the flushing protocol to see if that works.
Okay. And if there are no problems, great. But if there are, then what happens? You're exchanging water heaters for I couldn't guess how many families, right?
So we are working with the Plumbers Union here, UA 370. And this is being funded by the state of Michigan.
Okay.
So depending on what the results are, if it's isolated cases of water heaters being extremely damaged, then we'll just get those replaced. And the idea is that we have to see if the flushing protocols that are recommended to tackle Legionella issues in homes, if they really work or not.
Okay. And so
and with Legionella, it's very different. So let's, in a hypothetical situation, if say you have lead in your water and you drink that water, you will get lead poisoning for sure. But with Legionella, it's very complicated that if you have Legionella in your home plumbing, your immune system might be strong enough that you might not contract the disease.
Okay.
If you contract the disease, it might be misdiagnosed as pneumonia, which happens a lot. So unless you specifically look for Legionnaires, you won't find it.
Okay.
And it's a very complicated study which will go beyond just sampling. So once we have the results, we'll have to sit down with the State Department of Health and Human Services and see what we can do from there.
Okay. And can the family, for those that I understand last year there were some cases, can you recover from that just fine? Are there any long-standing?
Oh no. There were 98 cases. Let's say there were more than 80 cases, and then about 10 people died from Legionnaire's disease last year.
Okay.
So there is a very high fatality rate if you contract this disease.
I see. So what's the turnaround time on your?
Sorry.
What's the turnaround time on your testing?
It'll be about a month because we have to culture and grow Legionella in the lab. So we collect water samples and then we take them back to our lab. We ship them next day air. So we just ship the samples that we collected today and they should be in our lab tomorrow. But it takes about a month by the time they are incubated and cultured. And if they're grown, then we have to look for Legionella. And if we find it in high counts, that means that it was present in the water.
Okay.
And then we are also looking for DNA markers in addition to actually growing Legionella. So DNA markers along with alive Legionella is what is used to say that, all right, there is Legionella in this water, because there might be dead bacteria, which will still have DNA in the water, but which might not be alive, so we might not be able to grow it in the lab. So only culture positive and qPCR is the method that we use to analyze for DNA.
Okay.
Those two, if both are positive, that is when you can for sure say that there is Legionella species, and then you have to specifically look for Pneumophila, which is a subgenus of the species.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember, and I can't think of the source, but I remember reading an article recently where the citizens of Flint were told that it was okay to bathe in the water but not drink the water. Is that where
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the idea is that it was mainly related to lead, right? So if a water at home has lead in it, you're okay to bathe and wash your clothes in it, and even wash your dishes to a certain degree. It depends on the level of lead, but obviously not drink it at all and not brush your teeth with it. And if you have kids at your house who are younger than 10 years or senior citizens, they should be off the water completely. So it is advised that they should not even shower in it. But for the general population, the guideline is that it is okay to shower. Now, there are people still complaining about rashes.
Okay.
So with rashes, it is a case-to-case basis. So you and I might bathe in the same water, but one of us might get rashes, the other might not. And it also depends on a person's immune system and his physiology, his or her physiology.
Okay.
So if you have issues with rashes due to bathing in Flint water, obviously do not use your own judgment and do not bathe.
Right.
And is that just pertaining to lead, or the different foreign chemicals that you found in the water that cause other issues?
So
is it just the
here's
lead
thing.
that's safe, or is all of it
We
safe?
have, we looked for 30 other common metals that are found in water along with lead. And lead is obviously the one that was of most concern. And then we also teamed up with Dr. Dave Rekau from the University of Massachusetts, who is the leading expert in disinfection byproducts and all the other chemicals that a group called Water Defense is claiming to have found in exceedingly high levels in Flint. So when Dr. Rekau's team went in and tested the water, we tested it for them once and they tested it again in a few homes in Flint on their own. And they found that the levels were close to or even lower than the rest of the U.S.
Okay.
And Dr. Dave Rekau went on record and said that the levels that I've seen in Flint are actually lower than my own home in Amherst, Massachusetts. And he said that he bathes in his water. So,
okay.
So that is not a problem that we know of.
Okay. So.
And obviously people have different responses to different chemicals in water. So. I'm not a medical expert, so I wouldn't comment on that. But obviously, if a water is the cause for rashes for someone, they obviously should not bathe in it. But for the overwhelming majority of the population, and that's not the case.
So, is the city continuing to provide the citizens with water at this point? And then, is there? I guess my next question is: I wonder if there's like a certain danger level of the consumption of water? Like, if it's a small amount, it's okay, but if you pass a certain amount as far as consumption, then it'll have create health problems for you?
Right now, no one should be drinking Flint water.
Okay.
That is the general guideline. So if you are in the city of Flint, and if you get city of Flint water, you should not be drinking it. Because there is no safe level of lead in water, and lead levels are lower than what they were last year.
Okay.
But we are actually going in and doing another massive lead kit testing in July. And so we did one in August and September of last year, and then we did one in March, where we saw a definite drop in lead levels. But it was still not safe enough to proclaim that the water was safe to drink.
Okay.
And we are doing another round of testing in July. Hopefully we get better results this time.
Okay. All right.
But even if the water is proclaimed safe, that means that it meets the lousy federal standard, that is the EPA lead and copper rule. So it will meet the lousy standard that any other city in the US is expected to meet.
Okay.
Whether or not you should still be drinking that water and whether the citizens will trust the water again,
right.
I don't think so.
Right. I understand that. So remind us again how this problem occurred. What happened initially to create this crisis?
All right. So this was 2 years ago, in early 2014, when in a cost-saving measure, the city of Flint switched from Detroit water, which they had been on for 50, 60 years, to the Flint River water. Right, so because Detroit water was jacking up the rates and the city of Flint could not afford to really pay for that water, they switched to a locally available source. when they did that, this Flint River water is moderately corrosive to begin with. Corrosive as in that it eats the metals which the pipes are made of. And during the treatment process, they added a coagulant to take care of the TTHM issues that they had the moment they switched, which is called ferric chloride. So that increased the chloride levels in water. And chloride makes the water extremely corrosive. So what was moderately corrosive water to begin with, it was made highly corrosive by the treatment process. And they quote unquote forgot. So MDEQs went on record, Michigan DEQ, and said that they forgot to add what is known as corrosion control. Okay. So highly corrosive water is used in a lot of cities in the US, especially cities that depend on groundwater. But they add, which is in federal law, the Safe Drinking Water Act, where you have to add corrosion control to control the corrosion of the water, corrosion potential. So the city of Flint forgot to add the corrosion control. So what they were doing was sending extremely corrosive water through an old water infrastructure which had about 30,000 lead pipes. And they forgot to add corrosion control.
And is that literally what they're saying? Is that literally what they're saying? They forgot to add corrosion control?
If you go to our website, flintwaterstudy.org, we have detailed Freedom of Information Act requests where in emails they have quoted that, MDEQ internal employees in internal emails are saying that they forgot to add corrosion control. And, it's out now, so I guess it'll take care of itself. And so we later found out, I think it was Detroit News who came up with a piece which said that to even add corrosion control basically is a chemical known as orthophosphate, which is essentially sodium phosphate. So you get bags of these in bulk, and water treatment plants added towards the very end of the treatment drain. But it is not as simple as getting bags of these and dumping it into the water. You have to mix them well before it really leaves the plant. And
was that a method of trying to cut costs there?
Yeah, so the water treatment plant, the Flint Water Treatment Plant, because it hadn't been used to actually treat the water for 50, 60 years, it would have needed retrofitting worth $8 million to add the corrosion control. So that's why, it might be possible that that's what motivated the decision to not add corrosion control.
And
this was like a stopgap solution while they were waiting for the Carignan Water Authority pipeline, which will connect Genesee County to Lake Huron directly. That's set to complete end of this year or mid next year. And so while in the 2.5 year period, while they couldn't afford Detroit water and they had to provide water to the city, they chose the Flint River water.
I see. Yeah.
Have
you been privy to any information as to why it took the state so long to take on the cost of fixing this problem? Because I don't believe that they agreed to do that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question. Take on the cost for what?
Of fixing the water problem. Oh
yeah, so here's the thing. Lawmakers in Michigan, so the mayor of Flint, the governor of Michigan, all of these people were being advised, and they were trusting the scientists and engineers of Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, who are civil servants who are paid by the state to take care of, to make sure that there is safe water and the environment is protected in Michigan on behalf of the governor. So now so the majority of the blame in this issue falls with Michigan Department of Environmental Quality. It was not until they accepted that there was a problem that the state decided to put in money. Because obviously, if you are the governor of Michigan, put yourself in his shoes, and you have a whole city complaining about drinking water.
Right.
But you're not actually in that city. You live in Lansing. And then on the other hand, you have Michigan Department of Environmental Quality and the EPA, who keep telling you that everything is fine, there's nothing to worry about. What would you do?
Right.
You have no option but to trust these scientists and engineers at DEQ.
Right.
So although everyone is, there is so much mudslinging at the governor and the former mayor of Flint.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was not really much they could do until the government agencies accepted that, all right, there is a problem.
Mm-hmm. And so do you know whether or not will someone actually be charged with anything? Do you?
Oh yeah, there were 3 people who were charged on this. I'm not sure. I know one of them was the utilities administrator,
Mm-hmm.
who actually helped us in the beginning when we were investigating what is going on in Flint.
Mm-hmm.
The utilities administrator actually had an interview with Dr. Edwards and Kurt Guyette of ACLU of Michigan,
Mm-hmm.
where he told us that due to pressure from MDEQ, they are actually sampling at random homes and throwing out samples to make sure that they fall under the lead and copper rule
Okay.
and comply to the law.
Okay.
So, and then the utilities administrator also had sent internal emails that we later found out through Freedom of Information Act requests,
Mm-hmm.
where he told the emergency manager and the mayor of Flint that if water flows through the Flint water treatment plant,
Mm-hmm.
it is against my recommendation.
Oh, I see.
So, at this point, I don't know if more charges will come out against people, but the people who were charged, they were actually working for other people who were directly involved in this.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the entire situation was completely preventable.
Oh, yeah, by all means.
Yeah.
All you had to do was add corrosion control, and this would have never happened.
Right.
So it was a complete disregard for public safety, and it's all about the culture of compliance, where the primary goal of these government agencies is to follow the law and not protect the public health.
Right.
So that's what caused this.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And in this case, they didn't even follow law.
Mm-hmm.
So while the Flint River water was flowing through the city of Flint water distribution system from, April of 2014 to October of 2015,
Mm-hmm.
Flint was the only city in the U.S. which did not have corrosion control that we know of.
Right.
And there is also the overarching problem of the loopholes in the EPA lead and copper rule.
Mm-hmm.
So the law is so screwed up that, in January, the Federal Emergency Management Authority walked through the streets of Flint, handing out bottled water and filters to the residents of Flint. And officially, the city of Flint has not failed the lead and copper rule yet.
Right.
So
All right.
officially, the city is still in compliance.
Definitely a crisis here. A terrible thing that's affecting
Yeah.
so many people. All right.
And this has taken off. So the media has picked up on this, and everyone is doing great work and investigating what's going on in other cities.
Mm-hmm.
Because Dr. Edwards has been, since his involvement in what is now known as the DC lead and drinking water crisis from 2001 to 2004,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
since then he has been advocating that unless the loopholes are closed, something like DC would happen again, and it happened in Flint.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, the agencies haven't learned their lessons, and there is this willful blindness that something like Flint couldn't happen anywhere else, but it happened in DC.
Right.
So if it happened in DC, it could happen anywhere else.
Right.
So even now, the lesson hasn't been learned, and something like Flint could happen anywhere in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We are hearing about cases in Philadelphia, in Ohio, in LA.
Wow. Yep.
So there was a Guardian report that said 33 water utilities which serve over 100,000 people in the U.S. are cheating on the lead and copper rule.
Mm-hmm.
So,
So, yeah.
Wow.
Shine a little
Yeah.
light. You never know what you might find.
yeah.
So in closing, Anurag, are there any, remarks that you'd like or advisement you'd like to give any of our listeners pertaining to, being mindful of their water?
Yeah, so the final recommendation to anyone who is concerned about their water would be to question their water.
Mm-hmm.
And the way the things are in the U.S. right now, no tap water should be considered safe unless you have had it tested.
Okay.
So the best thing to do would be to call up your water utility and ask them to test your water.
Mm-hmm.
and go through the sampling protocol and see if they're doing things like pre-flushing before collecting the water or removing the aerator. All these things are available on our website. These are the major loopholes that utilities in the U.S. are exploiting to get under the radar. And then we have also collaborated with a nonprofit called Healthy Babies Bright Futures. So their website is hbbf.org. So if you go onto that website, you can buy kits at reasonable rates, which are just for labor and our equipment. And what will happen is our lab ships those kits to the homeowners. They can sample their water, send it back to us, and we send them their results. So, I mean, that project has been on for about 4 months now, and we have received a good response. So anyone who is concerned about their water can get a test kit from the utility or go on to Healthy Babies Bright Futures and get one from our lab.
Okay, sounds good. Well, thank you, Anurag, for joining us. We certainly appreciate your time and all that you do. We're very gracious to your team, and best of luck to you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Have a good one.